Lauren Stratford, born Laurel Rose Wilson, was an accomplished author with 3 books, numerous speaking engagements, and an appearance on the very popular Oprah Winfrey Show. The story she told, Satan's Underground, was a harrowing tale of a young girl molested and assaulted and sold into sexual slavery to what she deemed the devil's henchmen. It's a yarn that would send Lauren into the stratosphere of public celebrity at the peak of the Satanic Panic. But questions would soon arise about the authenticity of her past and the veracity of her story.
My next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism.
Rituals are going on where victims are made to give their lives. It's true, it's happening all over the country, and you better begin believing it.
In recent years, news media has begun to reevaluate and deconstruct the Satanic Panic, a bout of mass hysteria that afflicted the United States for over a decade. But what if it wasn't just hysteria? What if some of it was true? Ritual Rewind brings you into the darkest corners of the 1980s, uncovering the crimes, conspiracies, and occult fears that shaped a generation. Tonight, we rewind it back to 1988 and dive into the story of author Lauren Stratford and another tale of a child sex cult and pornographic snuff films. It's the case of the devil in Satan's Underground, and I'm your host, Drew, and you're listening to The Ritual Rewind. Lauren Stratford was born prematurely in Tacoma, Washington in 1941 and was adopted by Frank and Rose Wilson, a physician and school teacher respectively. She grew up in the small town of Buckley, Washington, and by all outward appearances, Lauren's parents were devout and respected members of the local Presbyterian church. But according to Laura, that was all a facade, and it began to break away once she spent any time in her home. Her mother was abusive, both physically and emotionally, to both Lauren and to Lauren's father. She berated them, beat them, and demeaned them to the point that it was detrimental to their physical and mental well-being. But her father never fought back. He endured it silently until one day he just left and never came back. Lauren was abandoned by her father and left to fend for herself against her mother's tirades when she was only 4 years old. According to Lauren, the sexual abuse started when she was just 6 years old. It was perpetrated by a landscaper that had worked for her mother, a dirty, smelly, drunk of an old man. He captured her in the basement when she had descended the stairs into the dark abyss to retrieve a load of laundry set there by her mother. During the attack, Lauren cried out for her mother, but her mother never came. And like many victims of sexual assault, Lauren wondered what she had done to deserve this. How had she provoked this? And why was this her fault? It was a shame that would never leave her. And sadly, this wasn't an isolated event. It would happen to her over and over again in that very same basement by a variety of different men, all smelly, all dirty. Each and every time she would call out for her mother, and again, her mother would never come. During one of these episodes, her attacker began to laugh at her.
"Your mother isn't coming for you. She's the one that gave you to me."
It was then that Lauren realized she was a commodity, a currency used by her mother to pay for the services rendered to her home. She was the whore, and her mother was the pimp. But despite the hypocrisy of a Christian mother who treated her in such a way, Lauren found solace in the church and in Jesus Christ, longing for the comfort that only He could seemingly provide her. Her faith in the Lord was not dashed by her mother, who often told her that God wanted nothing to do with such a
Filthy whore of a child.
One day after school, a photographer was waiting for Lauren outside her home. Her mother told her that she was to go with him, and reluctantly, Lauren obeyed. The photographer took her deep into the woods where she met another man waiting with a goat and a dog. The photographer told Lauren to strip nude and to pose with the animals. As the session progressed, Lauren was forced into oral copulation with the goat and the dog. Lauren would eventually discover a magazine beneath her mother's bed. It featured a pictorial spread with the photos taken of Lauren in the woods, and the magazine editors dubbed her the Barnyard Babe. It wasn't long after that that the photographer began coming into her home and photographing her in the basement. Carnal acts with other children and adult men captured forever on celluloid. Lauren sought help from her pastor, her youth pastor, and her school counselor. They all listened to her with a sympathetic ear, but did nothing to help her. To them, Lauren's mother was nothing but an upstanding Christian woman, and the idea of abused children was unthinkable during this time in American culture. And so Lauren continued to suffer under her mother's persistent and relentless abuse. As Lauren entered high school, the abuse became so severe that she was unable to hide it from her classmates. And after one harrowing incident at the age of 15, when her mother shot scalding hot water up her rectum because she took too long in the bathroom, her friends offered to help her escape. They sacrificed their lunch money and bought Lauren a bus ticket out of town. By the time Lauren had reached Tacoma, she had decided to report the abuse to the police. She told them everything, but when she did, the police just told her to go back home and live with her mother until she turned 16. And then she would be old enough that she could live anywhere that she wanted to. Lauren refused to go home and spent the night in the park. But as time passed, she knew she couldn't continue with this lifestyle, and so she panhandled for money and bought a bus ticket back home. But when she arrived back in Buckley, she didn't return to her mother, but instead, she submitted herself to juvenile hall. She hoped that if she claimed to be a delinquent, that they would lock her up and she would be spared from her mother's wrath. And to her relief, it was her father who came to her rescue and claimed custody of her. Lauren went to live with him for a time, and for a time, she lived in peace. But it was very, very brief. She was never truly out of the reach of her mother. Her mother called her father on a daily basis to berate and demean him, and her father soon bent under the weight of the mother's harassment, and men came to retrieve Lauren from her father's home. It became clear to Lauren that there was a large network of men who would abuse her, and that no matter how far she fled, they would always find her. Lauren was forced to work and live in a pornographic studio. It was owned by a man named Victor who would come in and watch on occasion as Lauren was forced to have sex with men, women, children, and animals. And on not so rare occasions, she would witness the creation of snuff films, in which a woman or child would be murdered for the man's sexual fulfillment. After a while, Lauren seemingly proved her worth to the company and was promoted to become one of Victor's girls. She was moved to a lavish estate hidden deep in the countryside to live with Victor. Victor was not a good man by any measure. Not only was he a pornographer, he was a drug kingpin and sold babies on the black market. Here, Lauren would no longer be filmed for pornographic videos, but instead she would be sold for the use of high-paying clients that would be allowed to do whatever they wanted to her without question. Any resistance from Lauren would result in punishment and possibly even death. Rumors amongst Victor's girls claimed that when he was displeased with one of them, he would order her to be forcefully overdosed, driven into the city, and to be dumped into an alley to die like trash. Lauren worked hard to keep Victor happy, and once Lauren had proved her loyalty, Victor marked her as one of his prized women by cutting her across the forehead with a razor blade. It was then that Lauren was introduced to the darkest aspects of Victor's life. Victor was a Satanist. Victor was a high priest of his own coven and would hold black masses in his basement on a weekly basis. There he had built an altar to the Dark Lord himself, and according to Lauren, she had witnessed some unexplainable, supernatural things. Fire changing colors, ghostly apparitions, and bodies levitating off the ground. She watched as newborns were snatched from their mother's embrace and sacrificed to the devil. These babies came from the girls who became pregnant while imprisoned and pimped out by Victor. Lauren was forced to participate in the ceremonies as a sexual offering to Satan, in which members of the coven would rape her and then cut her and drain her blood into a chalice for them to drink afterwards. This continued week after week. Her body was marked with the scars of these events. As her participation in the satanic rituals increased, Lauren witnessed a horrific scenario, a performance more perverse than she had seen before or could have ever imagined. Victor and his coven found two runaways living on the street, a boy and a girl. They kidnapped them and married them during a satanic mass. Once the ceremony was over, the coven gave them an infant child to hold as their own. It was the image of a perfect family, a husband, a wife, and a child. And then the coven immediately defiled it. The 2 teens were sexually assaulted and brutalized, and the infant was murdered in a horrible sacrilege to the Christian faith. As the torment grew, Lauren sought solace in Christian scripture from a small Bible that she was able to hide in her room. But after many brutal nights at the hands of Victor and his coven without rescue and without mercy, Lauren began to seek salvation from something else. She had seen the devil perform miracles before, and maybe he'd do the same for her. She asked Victor to be dedicated to Satan. The night of her dedication was Halloween, the devil's holiday. After weeks of being subjugated to live within a dark box filled with serpents and bodies of dead, mutilated infants dropped inside, Lauren stood at the altar of Satan. She was dressed in a black robe and handed a knife. She had been given drugs to make her more pliable and willing to proceed with the macabre acts soon required of her. A baby was placed on the altar, and she was to sacrifice it to the devil. But Lauren resisted, even with the drugs in her system. Victor took her by the hand and guided her through the motions. And with each stab of the blade, she imagined it going into the hearts of each member of the coven. It was at that moment she blacked out, only to be reawoken in a cemetery, 6 feet deep in her own grave. She was being buried alive in a ritual burial. It was done, and she was broken. And her prayers to God, or the devil, were answered. Victor released her from his control, and she returned home. But she wasn't alone. She found attached to her a vengeful spirit that appeared to her in her dreams. It berated her, harassed her, and demeaned her so much that she could not rest. Her body had been abused for so many years, but she had been able to endure it with her belief in the loving Christ. But now her mind faced what she believed to be insurmountable. The insomnia forced upon her by her dreams made her waking moments fraught with terror. She didn't believe that she was truly in control of herself, and ultimately admitted herself to a psychiatric hospital for care. It wasn't until Lauren faced the darkest secret she kept hidden, even from herself, that she was able to break the bonds that held her so tightly. While under Victor's thumb, Lauren had given birth to 3 children, which she had named Joey, Carly, and Lindy. Born under bondage and ritualistic assaults on her body, 2 of them were sacrificed on the altar of Satan, one of which she had participated in directly, and the third, the victim of a pornographic snuff film.
I did become pregnant. I had a child who was taken from me at birth, and at the age of 6 months, they had a ritual where I was the altar, the human flesh altar, and Joey was sacrificed.
It was a harrowing tale that she told first to Hal Lindsey, the author of the late great Planet Earth, a book that was fundamental in shaping the modern church's apocalyptic theories on end-time tribulations and Armageddon. It led to her writing her own book, Satan's Underground, which I used for this story. That led to her appearance on Oprah Winfrey with Michelle Smith, the author of Michelle Remembers, a book many consider to be the match that ignited the Satanic Panic. But much like Michelle Smith's story, Lauren's was just that, a tale, a story, a fiction. Reporters for Cornerstone Magazine, a periodical that focused on topics of an evangelical nature, began to investigate the unbelievable claims of Lauren Stratford and found some glaring inconsistencies. They uncovered a history of mental illness and self-abuse. The physical scars she bore were not the product of occult rituals, but of repeated and failed suicide attempts. First and foremost, in the book, Lauren Stratford was portrayed as an only child, but she wasn't. She had a sister named Willow, who was 5 years older than her. Like the book, their mother was unpredictable and had a severe temper and anger management issues. Their father was often the focus of her rages, and he took the brunt of the attacks. Their father did divorce their mother, but it was when Lauren was 9 years old, and not 4 as she had claimed in the book. In the article for Cornerstone Magazine, Willow is quoted as saying, "Both of my parents were fully committed to the Lord Jesus Christ. My sister and I were raised in a very sheltered, strict Christian home. There was no place in our home for anything remotely occult or pornographic. My mother continues today as a dedicated Christian." During high school, Lauren was active in school with numerous extracurricular activities, and she excelled at music. On one occasion, she and her friends were injured in a car accident coming home from a recital. In the hospital, Lauren begged for her father to come, but her father never came. It was shortly after this incident that Lauren ran away from home and ended up at Raymond Juvenile Hall, until her father came and took her into custody. However, her father lived in San Bernardino, California, and Lauren realized that she much more preferred the schools back home in Buckley, Washington, so she returned to her mother. But her relationship with her mother was frayed, and she eventually moved in with her sister Willow, who was now married with children. It was there that Lauren made her first accusation of sexual abuse. Lauren told a high school friend that she had been molested by her brother-in-law. This accusation, of course, strained her relationship with her sister and brother-in-law, as the allegations were proven to be false. Willow sought out psychiatric help for her sister, and it was after only a few sessions that the psychiatrist told Willow and her husband that Lauren was a danger to their children and should not stay in their house any longer. Lauren was sent back to live with her mother. Lauren graduated high school and enrolled in college in the fall of 1959. It was at college that Lauren began to formulate the tale that would be the subject of her first book. She told a classmate that her mother had driven her to the bad side of town to be a prostitute when she was just a child. The classmate reported this information to the school faculty, and Lauren quickly recanted her accusations. She admitted that she had made up the stories to impress her friend, and obviously, that had failed. After this incident, Lauren attempted suicide by slitting her wrists, and after receiving medical care, she again moved in with her father, and again she made another false accusation. Her father was sexually abusing her. Lauren again was forced to move and ended up with a young married couple who felt pity on her, only to experience a psychotic episode in which she locked herself in their bathroom, cut her face with glass from a broken vase, and then proceeded to break down the bathroom door and attack the friend's wife with the shard of glass. It was only because of the family's son, who tackled Lauren to the ground, that the wife survived the attack. And again, Lauren was forced to move, but this time she disappeared for a while, only to turn up at a drug rehab program in Los Angeles, California. The thing is she didn't have a drug problem, and she never did. But she was able to craft a compelling tale that garnered her a lot of sympathy, until eventually she was caught in her lies and called out on it. She returned to Tacoma and got married. Lauren met her husband Frank while at church, and after 3 dates, Lauren suggested marriage, and Frank agreed. He attested that when they consummated their marriage, Lauren absolutely was a virgin, though claims in her book state that she had been sexually active since the age of 6. Lauren would eventually get the marriage annulled. Lauren then moved to Bakersfield, California, and started a support group for battered women called Victims Against Sexual Abuse, and she was invited on a radio show to talk about her experiences as an abused woman. It was here that she first mentioned Satanism as part of her experience, and according to her, she was still being harassed and threatened by Satanists to that day. Investigators also realized that many of Lauren's stories were lifted directly from Sybil. Sybil was a 1973 book written by Flora Schreiber and is about a patient named Sybil Dorset who suffers from dissociative identity disorder. In February 1990, copies of Lauren's book were pulled from the shelves, but this wouldn't be the last time Lauren had a story to tell. In 1999, Lauren would construct another false identity and attempt another grift. She took the name of Lauren Grabowski and claimed to be a survivor of the Holocaust. She said that she had been an orphan from Krakow, Poland, who had survived the medical experiments of Nazi Joseph Mengele at the concentration camp in Auschwitz, and had been adopted by an American family in the 1950s. She spoke at numerous conferences in which survivors told their tales of heartache and survival, and she accepted thousands of dollars in donations that were intended for true victims of the genocide before her fraud was ultimately revealed. She died on April 8, 2002. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Ritual Rewind. In researching this episode, we relied on the book Satan's Underground by Lauren Stratford and the article Satan's Sideshow, The True Lauren Stratford Story by Bob and Gretchen Pasatino and John Trott. I'm looking to grow this podcast, so if you like it, please rate it and review it. It really, really does help. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, give it a like and a comment. And as always, you can interact with us at The Ritual Rewind on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Thank you, and have a good night.